doctrine of becoming. Self-knowledge meets the flow of change. From thesis to method. What survives is what learns to move. What endures is what learns to change without losing form. This is the doctrine of becoming. Evolution is not a metaphor. It is the measure of integrity, survival, and meaning. The thesis is simple. Religion did not descend complete from heaven. It emerged as a human instrument for ordering behavior, concentrating authority, and transmitting norms across generations. In that sense, it has been a method of control that tethered humanity for millennia. To understand its origins is to recover agency over our present and our future. This is not a sermon against faith. It is an inquiry into mechanisms. We will separate private belief from public control, metaphysics from management, devotion from discipline. The measure is not outrage but evidence. Religion, for our purposes, is an organized system of beliefs, practices, and institutions that claims moral authority over conduct, encodes cosmology, and enforces compliance through ritual, sanction, and reward. Control is the shaping of behavior through incentives, penalties, surveillance, and narrative. Cited classical sociology and anthropology of religion theorists, and cultural evolution, and signaling scholars of religion. James Fraser cast religion as an early technology of order, charting a passage from magic to religion to law in the Golden Bough. Emile Durkheim argued that the sacred is society in disguise and that ritual generates collective effervescence that binds moral norms. Max Weber showed how priesthoods routinize charisma into durable authority, and how modernization disenchants sacred power. Clifford Geertz framed religion as a system of symbols that makes a moral order feel factual, offering models of and models for reality. William Irons, and empirically, Richard Sosis and E.R. Bressler explain how costly rites signal commitment and deter free riders, strengthening cooperation. Joseph Henrich linked these patterns to cultural evolution and group selection, while Aaron Norenzian's Big Gods hypothesis specified how moralizing watchful deities scale trust in large societies. Together they map religion as a coordination, legitimation, and commitment apparatus that enables groups to grow, persist, and control behavior. Origins: why religion arises. Anthropology and history converge on three pressures that produce religion. 1. Coordination under uncertainty. In small bands and early cities, shared myth aligned behavior when law was weak and literacy rare. 2. Legitimation of hierarchy. Leaders presented rule as sacred, not merely practical, transforming obedience into piety. 3. Ritual cost and commitment. Costly rites screened free riders and signaled loyalty, stabilizing coalitions that could fight, farm, and build. Fraser mapped the passage from magic to religion to law. Durkheim argued that the sacred is the social in disguise. Weber showed how priesthoods rationalize power and transmit it across time. Different frameworks, same pattern. Religion codifies control so that groups can scale. Why religion emerges: an analytical model. Expanded. Across cultures and eras, religion functions less as revealed blueprint and more as an institutional technology that solves recurrent coordination, hierarchy, and commitment problems. Anthropology, sociology, and cultural evolution research converge on three primary pressures. 1. Coordination under uncertainty. When groups face volatile environments, low literacy, and weak formal law, they require reliable common knowledge to align behavior fast. Mechanism. Shared myths, origin stories, and cosmologies generate focal points that reduce strategic ambiguity in coordination games. Public ritual and calendrical festivals create synchronized expectations about who does what, when, and with whom. Classical theory. Durkheim treats the sacred as society objectifying itself, with collective effervescence binding individuals to common norms, the elementary forms of religious life. Geertz frames religion as a system of symbols that establishes powerful moods and motivations by clothing a cosmic order with an aura of factuality. Comparative cases: early city temple complexes in Mesopotamia, Andean Elu ritual calendars coordinating irrigation and planting, Polynesian tapu systems governing access to scarce resources. Testable implications, where exogenous uncertainty is high and contract enforcement is weak. Expect denser ritual calendars, stronger taboos, and broader reliance on divination or omens to coordinate action. As alternative coordination media rise, such as literacy, codified law, and markets, religious monopolies on coordination should weaken. 2. Legitimation of hierarchy. Scaling beyond face-to-face bands requires authority that is seen as necessary, rightful, and emotionally compelling. Mechanism. By sacralizing rank and office, elites convert compliance from instrumental to moral. Rule becomes duty, taxation becomes tithe, and punishment becomes purification. Classical theory. Weber's tripartite authority distinguishes charismatic, traditional, and legal rational forms. Priestly office routinizes charisma and stabilizes succession, economy, and society. Fraser's sequence from magic to religion to law models a shift from personal technical efficacy to institutionalized moral order. Comparative cases: Pharaoh as divine king, the mandate of heaven in imperial China, European sacral kingship and later divine right claims, the caliphal fusion of religious and political authority. Testable implications: in periods of dynastic crisis or elite turnover, expect intensified sacral claims, miracle narratives, or relic cults that retheorize authority. Where legal rational bureaucracy consolidates and provides credible procedures, sacral legitimation should decline or morph into civil religion. 3. Ritual cost and commitment. Collective action suffers from free riding. Groups need credible signals of loyalty and mechanisms that sustain cooperation over time. Mechanism. Costly, sometimes painful or time-intensive rites screen out low-commitment members and increase within-group trust. Synchrony, music, fasting, pilgrimage, and sacrifice create physiologic bonding and reputational capital that can be mobilized for defense, agriculture, or public works. Contemporary theory, costly signaling and commitment models, Irons, Sosis, and Bressler, show that costlier sects often persist longer and cooperate more. Cultural evolution work, Henrich, and the Big Gods hypothesis, Norenzayan, argue that surveillance by morally concerned deities and third-party punishment norms scale cooperation in large, anonymous societies. Comparative cases: monastic orders with strict rule sets and high entry costs, revivalist sects with demanding purity codes, warrior brotherhoods with initiatory ordeals. Testable implications. Higher ritual cost should correlate with higher volunteerism, lower defection in public goods games, and stronger mutual aid during shocks, as secular institutions replicate commitment functions at lower cost. High-cost religious signals should either intensify for a smaller core or relax and hybridize. Synthesis across frameworks. Fraser tracks the historical passage from personal manipulation of forces, magic, to institutionalized moral authority, religion, to codified procedure, law. This structure predicts the decline of clerical monopolies as legal systems mature. Durkheim identifies religion's binding function, treating deities as social ideals externalized. The predicted outcome is the strongest ritual when social density and identity threats are high. Weber shows how priesthoods rationalize and bureaucratize charisma, allowing power to transmit across generations and geographies. Predicts continual tension between prophetic disruption and priestly stabilization. Different idioms, same architecture. Religion codifies control so that groups can scale, then compete with emergent substitutes as literacy, markets, and states mature. Boundary conditions and counterclaims. Prosocial effects. Religious communities often outperform secular baselines on mutual aid, loneliness mitigation, and recovery from shock. The question is not whether benefits exist, but whether clerical monopoly and metaphysical coercion are necessary conditions. Pluralism and substitution. As alternative institutions provide coordination, legitimation, and commitment at lower cost and with greater transparency, expect religious control functions to hybridize into civil religion, value communities, or constitutional patriotisms. Path dependence. Early sacral choices shape later institutional possibilities. Some traditions embed reform mechanisms. Others harden, increasing exit rather than voice. Techniques of social control. Foucauldian disciplinary technologies in a religious register. Narrative monopoly. Canonical texts establish cosmology, teleology, and deontic rules, converting contingent story into authoritative knowledge. By relocating origin and purpose to revelation, they delimit permissible interpretation and foreclose ordinary dispute, stabilizing coordination under uncertainty. Ritual discipline. Calendars, fasts, purity regimes, and pilgrimage impose synchronized, repeatable routines that habituate bodies and time. This temporal regimentation makes behavior legible and mobilizable for authorities, lowering monitoring costs and enabling collective action at scale. Clerical gatekeeping. A specialized interpretive caste mediates access to the sacred and adjudicates life cycle statuses such as marriage, burial, inheritance, and reconciliation. Control of doctrine and rites confers jurisdiction over reputation and resources, institutionalizing hierarchy, sanction, and surveillance. Techniques like confession, inquisition, oath-taking, and communal policing translate private conscience into inspectable data. By coupling moral transgression to social penalty, institutions extend public law into intimate domains and enforce compliance preemptively. Sacralization of law. Norms are reclassified from prudential conventions to divine imperatives, transforming disagreement into profanity. This elevates rule enforcement from procedural authority to metaphysical necessity, raising the cost of dissent and entrenching doctrinal continuity. Case sketches across eras. Imperial syncretism. Pharaohs were gods by office, binding labor and law into liturgy. Christian Empire. The conversion of Constantine fused episcopal networks with imperial governance and rewrote heresy as treason. Caliphate and crown. Jurists linked Sharia to sovereignty, enabling both reformist vigor and doctrinal rigidity, depending on patronage. State religion. Tokugawa and Meiji Japan aligned shrines, schools, and soldiers. Modern populism. Civil religion reframes national identity as sacred story, making policy disputes feel like blasphemy. Different doctrines, same instrument. Religion scales compliance and stabilizes extraction. Psychology and the brain. Humans seek patterns under threat, agency behind accident, and meaning in loss. Ritual reduces anxiety. Group synchrony releases neurochemical rewards. Authority cues, short-circuit deliberation. None of this falsifies private spiritual experience. It explains why religious institutions are so effective at governing bodies and time. What about the good religion? Devil's advocate. The historical record shows that religious institutions have fed the poor, mitigated loneliness, preserved knowledge, and animated reform. Abolitionist sermons, civil rights pulpits, and monastic scriptoria are genuine goods. Yet under adverse leadership, the same infrastructure becomes an instrument of domination. Weber's routinization of charisma explains how prophetic energy hardens into priestly bureaucracy. Durkheim's sacred canopy can be reoriented to police deviance. Foucault's pastoral power links confession, surveillance, and discipline. Gramsci's hegemony clarifies how elites naturalize their rule through moral narrative. Assad's account of discursive tradition shows how appeals to orthodoxy regulate who may speak and what may count as truth. In such conditions, the 5 sacral governance technologies named become weapons. Narrative monopolies override plural memory. Ritual discipline scripts bodies into obedience. Clerical gatekeeping controls. Life chances. Sanction and surveillance extend jurisdiction into conscience. And the sacralization of law converts disagreement into profanation. The analytic task is not to deny religion's goods, but to ask whether those goods require clerical monopoly or metaphysical coercion. A testable standard follows. If transparent, plural institutions with equal or better outcomes and lower coercive cost can achieve welfare provision, mutual aid, meaning making, and moral formation, then the good is not proprietary to religion. Conversely, when religious authority resists audit, criminalizes dissent, fuses with state force, or systematically shields elites from correction, the mechanism has shifted from coordination to domination. The remedy is institutional. Protect dissent, diversify sources of legitimacy, publish failure conditions in advance, and prefer rules that survive inspection over narratives that forbid it. Deconstruction of religion. Darwin and Nietzsche. Religion's social power is intelligible once we treat it as a coordination, legitimation, and commitment technology, rather than as revelation. The next step is explanatory demystification. Darwin relocates order from decree to process. Natural selection shows that design can arise without a designer. That complexity can emerge from variation, inheritance, and differential survival. What population dynamics and ecological constraints capture earlier ages attributed to providence? Teleology yields to mechanism. The world does not obey commandments. It iterates. Under this lens, religious narratives look less like windows into a transcendent plan and more like early heuristics for managing uncertainty before science matured. Nietzsche completes the pivot on the ethical plane. If Darwin removes final causes from nature, Nietzsche removes inherited authority from value. His genealogy shows how moral codes are historical artifacts that serve domination and resentment as often as compassion. With the highest value discredited, two paths appear. The last man chooses comfort, conformity, and administered life. The alternative is self-legislation under exposure. The Übermensch is not a tyrant. He is the person who assumes authorship of value, tests it against reality, and accepts revision without collapse into nihilism. Where religion routinized obedience, Nietzsche demands creation with accountability. Science and philosophy together clarify what religion was doing in human history and why its control functions can be replaced. Mechanism replaces myth in explaining life. Genealogy replaces sanctity in evaluating norms. What remains is the task of becoming a self that does not outsource conscience to priest or party, that can justify its commitments without threat of hell or promise of metaphysical reward. The test is severe but practicable. Can we coordinate without dogma? Can we legitimate authority without sacral disguise? Can we sustain cooperation with transparent rules, costly but voluntary commitments, and institutions that accept audit? The bridge to the future is therefore a method, not a mood. State failure conditions in advance. Run the strongest counter. Revise in public. Keep what survives selection. Retire what does not. In that discipline, purity is not ritual cleanliness. It is integrity under pressure. Conclusion: to endure is to evolve. Integrity is verified under pressure. Meaning is what survives selection. Before we advance further, we pause to name the open questions and set our method for what comes next. Across the 8 episodes of the Eve Codex, we traced a continuous argument from origins to order. Biology rewards variation. Myth and meaning are forged under pressure. Conscience matures through disciplined authorship, and polities that refuse reform decay. This bridge converts this thesis into a protocol. It also names the hinge from collective story to personal sovereignty. Codified law is that hinge. By translating taboo into rule, oracle into clause, and charisma into procedure, law relocates authority from private revelation to public articulation. Once norms are written, they can be read, contested, amended, and taught. The text does not sanctify the self, but it creates the first stable surface against which a self can push, learn limits, and choose with knowledge of consequences. In this sense, law is the earliest training ground for authorship. It invites the citizen to move from obedience to understanding, and from inherited deference to accountable assent. The protocol follows. Name the claim in one sentence. Specify the environment that will pressure it, including time horizon, and resource constraints. State failure conditions in advance, identifying the evidence that would force revision or rejection. Present the strongest counter in full, with charity and precision. Derive a rule of practice that can be enacted this week and inspected next week. Apply the 3 measures throughout: integrity, survival, and meaning. Integrity is the refusal to rescue a failing claim with special pleading. Survival is performance that holds across iterations and contexts. Meaning is the production of human goods that withstand scrutiny, not only sentiment. Under this discipline, codified law becomes more than a tool of compliance. It becomes a scaffold for interior formation. The person who learns to argue from text, to submit conviction to proof, and to revise without collapse, begins to detach worth from tribal approval and attach it to demonstrated coherence. That movement is the first step toward a purer self, one that does not require metaphysical threat to act well. It is not a rejection of tradition, but its audit. The aim is simple and severe. Keep what survives contact with reality. Retire what fails. Author a life that can give reasons for its commitments and accept correction without resentment. That is integrity to the self, and it is the work of becoming. Final words from the voice of Kronos. If religion is a technology of control, then understanding its code returns control to citizens. Keep what works, retire what harms. Replace metaphysical force with transparent rule, open evidence, and disciplined craft. The point is not to empty life of wonder. It is to prevent wonder from being weaponized against the living. We advance with a simple charge. Measure what you believe. Keep what survives. Revise what fails. Create what is needed. Thank you for choosing seriousness over spectacle and method over nostalgia. We return in the next installment with instruments, not tablets, and with procedures, not decrees. The dance of becoming continues.